Major boost for the NHS, defence and affordable homes. The Chancellor announced billions of pounds of investment yesterday to renew Britain as she laid out her much-awaited spending review.
The Shadow Chancellor, Sir Mel Stride, criticised the announcement, calling it a spend now, raise taxes later review. The Chancellor, Rachel...
Picture this, the year is 2035. You are sitting in a charming cafe in Valletta, Malta, sipping a pastissi and looking at your bank balance, feeling rather chuffed. Meanwhile, back in Great Britain, the average citizen is looking at that same Maltese barista with a deep sense of economic envy. It sounds like the plot of a very niche dystopian novel, but according to the latest data from the Centre for Economics and Business Research, it is our projected reality. We are officially on track to be poorer than a tiny Mediterranean island that fits into London about 5 times over. While Chancellor Rachel Reeves insists she is fixing the foundations, the British public seems to think she is actually just digging a very expensive hole and asking us to pay for the shovel. Protesters are hitting the streets, the G7 is leaving us in the rearview mirror, and the only thing growing faster than our national debt is the collective blood pressure of the British taxpayer. We are no longer just the sick man of Europe. We are rapidly becoming the broke man of the global economy, and the Chancellor's latest tax raids are being cited as the primary reason for this fiscal nosedive. Quick favour, if you're loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It's free, takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks if you did. Now back to the show. The Malta milestone and national humiliation. Let us talk about the Malta milestone because it is the kind of statistic that should make every politician in Westminster spill their afternoon tea. The CAB's yearly league table of economies has dropped a bombshell. By 2035, living standards in the United Kingdom are forecast to dip below those in Malta. 2, yes, the same Malta where Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip lived happily as a young naval couple. Back then, Britain was a global titan. By 2035, Malta's GDP per capita is expected to hit roughly £57,400, while the UK limps behind at £55,900. It is a bit like seeing your local corner shop suddenly out-earn a multinational supermarket chain, impressive for the shop, but deeply embarrassing for the corporate giant. Pushpin Singh, a senior economist at the CE Bar, put it bluntly when he said that Britain is still very much living off its past glories. 3, it is a relatable analogy. We are like that former star athlete who still wears their high school Letterman jacket while struggling to jog to the end of the driveway. Our past glories don't pay the interest on £100 billion of debt, which is what we are projected to be shelling out every year by 2030. When your debt interest payments are essentially the size of a small country's entire economy, you know you have moved past challenging times and straight into fiscal emergency. The problem, as the experts see it, is a triple challenge of high inflation, high debt and stubbornly low growth. While countries like the US, France, Canada and even Italy, yes, Italy, the traditional poster child for economic chaos, are forecast to grow their GDP per capita faster than us, Britain is stuck in the G7's slow lane. 5, we are officially the second weakest grower in the club. 6, it is a suspenseful wait to see if we can actually reverse this trend, or if we are just waiting for the day the lights go out because we forgot to pay the national electric bill. The Rachel Reeves tax raid, a smorgasbord of pain. Now let us get into the Rachel Reeves tax raid, or what some are calling the smorgasbord of pain. The Chancellor stood up at the dispatch box in late 2025 and told us that taxes were being kept at an absolute minimum on ordinary working people. But as any Brit knows, the government's definition of an ordinary working person seems to get narrower every time they need to find a few extra £1 billion. The budget was a veritable feast of new levies, and unfortunately we are the ones being served as the main course. 7. First up, the mansion tax. If your home is worth more than £2 million, the Chancellor wants a slice of that unearned equity. But the real sting comes in the form of the frozen personal allowance. By locking the income tax threshold until 2031, Reeves is effectively using fiscal drag to pull millions of people into higher tax brackets. 8. It is the ultimate stealth tax. You get a pay rise that barely covers inflation, and the government immediately snatches a larger percentage of it. The CIBA points out that the pessimism leading up to this budget actually handicapped the economy for months, as businesses and individuals stopped spending, terrified of what the Chancellor of the Exchequer was about to do to their bank accounts. And it doesn't stop at property and income. We are seeing a new pay-per-mile tax for electric vehicles because apparently the reward for trying to save the planet is a GPS-tracked bill every time you drive to the supermarket. 9. Then there are the increased taxes on online betting and a raid on salary sacrifice pensions. 10. From April 2029, only the first £2,000 of pension contributions through salary sacrifice will be exempt from national insurance. It is a direct hit on the prudent savers who were trying to follow the rules and prepare for their future. It is as if the government saw people being responsible with their money and decided that simply could not be allowed to continue.
Why is Rachel Reeves suffering yet another budget nightmare? The Treasury has reportedly received a productivity downgrade from the Office for Budget Responsibility, and that downgrade is bigger than it expected originally. The OBR has downgraded productivity trends by 0.3 percentage points. This means the Treasury now faces a fiscal hole of at least £20 billion. Over the weekend, the former Chancellor and Prime Minister Rishi Sunak suggested that Rachel Reeves would face a smaller fiscal hole at the budget than expected. That's because Rachel Reeves had spoken about wanting to build a bigger headroom at this year's budget to avoid another sweep of tax rises and spending cuts. Labour MPs have already hit out at the fiscal watchdog for producing its productivity reviews ahead of this year's budget, claiming that they could have done this ahead of Conservatives' last autumn budget. To add to the cost of productivity downgrades, Rachel Reeves is also having to fill the cost of welfare spending U-turns as well as higher borrowing costs than expected. So it could prove to be an even more difficult budget for Rachel Reeves and for British taxpayers. So are you ready to stump up more cash to pay for productivity downgrades made by a forecaster? Let us know in the comments.
Cash, ASAs and the war on savers. If you thought your humble savings account was safe, think again. One of the most controversial moves in the latest fiscal plan is the reduction of the cash ISA limit. 12 from April 2027, the limit is being slashed from £20,000 to just £12,000 for those under the age of 65-13. It is a blatant war on savers. The message is clear. If you are young and trying to build up a deposit for a house or an emergency fund, Rachel Reeves would quite like a look at that capital. Thank you very much. This move has sent shockwaves through the financial sector. ISAs were one of the few remaining tax-free havens for the middle class. By cutting the limit, the government is essentially capping the ability of ordinary working people, the very ones Reeves said she was protecting, to build financial resilience. It is a short-term cash grab that risks long-term economic damage. When people stop saving, they stop investing. And when investment dries up, that low-growth problem Pushpin Singh warned about becomes a permanent fixture of the British landscape. Transitions between these topics are feeling more like a descent into madness for the average viewer. We go from taxing your car to taxing your house to taxing your savings. It is a relentless pincer movement. The mansion tax might grab the headlines, but it is the death by 1,000 cuts to IA's pensions and income thresholds that will actually lower the living standards of millions. We are being taxed at levels not seen since the aftermath of the Second World War, but without the benefit of a brand new NHS or a massive rebuilding project to show for it. Angry protesters and the Westminster bloodbath. Is it any wonder then that people are taking to the streets? The sight of angry protesters in Westminster has become a regular feature of the 2025 news cycle. We've seen farmers defying tractor bans to protest inheritance tax changes, and now we are seeing anti-austerity groups and ordinary families joining the fray. The mood is one of frustrated anger. People were promised change and a stronger economy, but what they have received is a tax bill that makes their eyes water and a forecast that says they will eventually be poorer than the residents of Malta. The tension is building ahead of the May local elections, which many are predicting will be a bloodbath for the Labour Party. When people feel the pinch in their pockets, they don't look at the macroeconomic charts or the fiscal headroom statistics. They look at the price of a pint, the cost of their mortgage, and the fact that their ISA is suddenly less useful. The government's claim that they are fixing the foundations is falling on deaf ears when the roof is currently leaking and the bailiffs are at the door. Relatable analogies abound here. The government is like a landlord who spends all your rent money on fancy lobby furniture while refusing to fix the heating in your flat. They are prioritising fiscal credibility with the bond markets over the actual living standards of the people who live in the country. 15. The CA bar report is a wake-up call, but the protesters on the street are the alarm clock that the Chancellor is desperately trying to hit the snooze button on. But as we know, you can only ignore the alarm for so long before you are late for the future.
So the UK economy unexpectedly grew in the final 3 months of the year following a boost to construction and services sector. It expanded by 0.1%. We were on recession watch for a long period of time, I think. So there will be a sigh of relief from number 11 that the economy did grow by 0.1%. What is interesting about this, they also looked at living standards. This is growth, GDP per capita, and said they have dropped. The worry, I think, and I wonder what your thoughts are on this. I mean, I don't think we're in particularly buoyant economic health.
No. And so this is why, look, as a financial journalist, I unbelievably appreciate how some of these numbers are, I mean, just a little bit pointless, right? A lot of this is, what measures they're using, and growth is 0.1, and, inflation is this and that. And people listening are going, so?
Yeah.
You don't need to tell me. Right?
Yeah.
You don't need to give me a figure.
Things are expensive.
The things, exactly.
Yeah.
The things are going up, that I feel squeezed. Let me take April, for example. Water bills going up by, hundreds of pounds. Council tax in some areas going up by over 9%. Right? Energy bills, as we spoke about earlier, are going up. I don't need to tell anybody what figures are coming out for them to know that this doesn't feel great. The economic figures, again, and we spoke about this, and I said, 1%, 0.1% Schmentz. It's not because I find it necessarily boring. It's because I find it it's so marginal. So, what does recession means? Well, it technically means, 2 quarters or 2 3-month periods of declining economic growth, right? So falling GDP. That doesn't mean anything to anyone, really, does it? And 0.1%, what's 0.1% between friends? Well, it's the difference of saying we're in recession or we're not. But the reality is the same.
The G7 laggard, why we are falling behind. Why is this happening? Why is Britain the laggard of the G7? The experts point to a toxic mix of factors. We have higher energy costs than many of our peers, a labour market that is struggling with long-term sickness, and a tax system that is becoming so complex it would baffle a team of Enigma code breakers. While countries like Germany and the US are aggressively subsidising their industries and keeping a lid on personal taxes to encourage spending, the UK seems to be doing the exact opposite. We are taxing the very things that drive growth, work, saving and investment. The CA-BERS forecast that we will be overtaken by Malta, the UAE and even Finland by 2030 is a sharp reminder that global competition is ruthless. Capital and talent are mobile. If you make it too expensive to live and work in Britain, the mega-rich won't be the only ones leaving. The entrepreneurs, the doctors and the engineers will follow suit. We are already seeing British business interest in Malta's low tax regime surging. It is a suspenseful moment for the UK economy. Can we pivot back to being a business-friendly nation, or are we content to slowly decline into a high-tax, low-growth museum of our own history? Rachel Reeves faces what some have called an impossible trilemma. Restore public finances, avoid deep spending cuts, and don't raise taxes on working people. 17 so far, she has managed the first by failing spectacularly on the third. The smorgasbord of tax rises might balance the books in the short term, but if it destroys the incentive to work and save, the books will never stay balanced for long. The seeds of destruction mentioned by union chiefs are being watered by the Chancellor's own fiscal policies. The road to 2035, a choice of futures. As we look toward that 2035 horizon, the choice for the UK is stark. We can continue down this path of austerity light and stealth tax raids, or we can actually engage in the structural reforms that would make us competitive again. The CA bar report isn't a prophecy, it is a warning. It is a what-if scenario that shows the logical conclusion of our current trajectory. If we want to avoid being the poor relation of Malta, we need more than just mansion taxes and paper mile schemes. We need a vision for growth that actually feels like growth to the person on the street. The angry protesters aren't just a PR problem for number 10. They are a symptom of a deep-seated disconnect between the government's rhetoric and the public's reality. When people feel that their living standards are being handicapped by their own government, the social contract begins to fray. We are watching a high-stakes political drama unfold where the main character is the British economy and the ending is currently looking like a very expensive tragedy. So, as the Chancellor prepares for her next round of difficult decisions, she might want to take a look at the streets of London and the cafe culture of Malta. One is full of frustration and the other is full of our future competitors. The British Report will be here to keep you updated on whether we choose to lead the next industrial revolution or if we are happy just being the people who invented the first one and then forgot how to keep the lights on. Thank you for watching. Good day.